So growing up, the first memory that I have regarding music, and I played it over and over again, was Nancy Sinatra. These boots are made for walking, just like grabbed onto me. I think I was 3 years old, and I'd run around, and they bought me go-go boots. So I'd run around in these go-go boots, and I just thought I was it. I mean, attention was my first addiction, you know. I mean, I was just like, see, look at me, I'm in my go-go boots, and I would sing and dance.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Set Listing Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson, but joining me today, we're kind of stepping off the Bruce train, though he will come up as he always does. But I have someone who I am so excited about talking with. I tried to count how many times you've reinvented yourself, Deborah, and I lost count, and I am just in awe with you. Deborah Driggs, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, I've lost count too. Let's we don't have to keep track.
Well, I just think it's interesting, and well, go ahead. For my audience, why don't you give us your elevator pitch? Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Deborah Driggs. I am a former Playboy Playmate model and cover girl, and really reinvented myself in the business world. Got to be in the top 5% in sales in the life insurance industry. And, you know, they're completely polar opposites. And so I think, you know, in the last 10 years, anytime anybody finds out, oh my God, you were in Playboy, you know, it just strikes up this whole conversation of how did you go from doing that to getting into business? And so, you know, I don't know that it's an elevator pitch story, but, you know, it definitely comes up at times throughout my life.
Yeah, and what's
And
interesting is, at least to me, and you know, there are groups in Facebook where you look for a guest and be a guest, and people post like, "Hey, I'm looking for guests to join my podcast," or "I'm looking to join people on your podcast." And you had reached out a really wonderful kind of pitch about this, and I said, "Well, I do a music podcast. Would you be interested?" And you went, "Yes, absolutely."
yeah, I love music. Are you kidding? Yeah,
Yeah.
music is, you know, it's interesting because music is really a huge part of, you know, my life, because even though I play piano, but I'm a beginner. So I don't really play an instrument, and I don't, you know, I like to tell you that I sing, but only in the shower.
I know
And
that feeling.
yeah, so, but music is a huge part of my life because I grew up as a figure skater. And every morning I skated from 4 until 7 a.m. before school. And we would listen. Back then it was 8-track tapes. And I remember there were two choices in the morning. This is all we had. Early morning, 4 a.m. was Wings, Paul McCartney Wings, and Elton John, Yellow Brick Road.
Well,
And those, I know
yeah.
those albums like the back of my hand, because every morning during Patch, those were the two albums. Every once in a while, we'd play Barry Manilow or Neil Diamond, but it was Wings Across America, Paul McCartney, and you know, so when I hear those songs, it takes me right back to the ice.
You are, it appears you and I are of the same generation, because I graduated high school in 77. So my AM clock radio was my best friend, listening to, and I also, Elton John's Greatest Hits was the first 8-track I bought with my own money, you know, and so it is amazing. And you've led me perfect. I always like to start at the beginning. So where did you grow up? And besides Elton John and Wings, what other music was at the house? What did your parents listen to?
So I was born in 63.
Okay.
And I was born in Oakland, California on the naval base. My dad was in the Marine Corps, but I think I was born in the Naval Base Hospital near Treasure
Okay.
Island there in Oakland. But we moved right away to Torrance, California. So I grew up in the South Bay area of Southern California. And I'm a Southern California girl, really. That's where I grew up. Grew up Torrance, different little areas, but mainly in Torrance. Went to a private school in Redondo Beach, and then I went to high school in a city called Hawthorne. And
The Beach Boys,
the
Brian
Beach
Wilson.
Boys,
Yes.
that's it, of
Yes.
course. So growing up, the first memory that I have regarding music, and I played it over and over again, was Nancy Sinatra. These boots are made for walking, just like grabbed onto me. I think I was 3 years old, and I'd run around, and they bought me go-go boots. So I'd run around in these go-go boots, and I just thought I was it. I mean, attention was my first addiction, you know. I mean, I was just like, see, look at me, I'm in my go-go boots, and I would sing and dance. And then I loved Disney growing up, you know, so all the music from all the Disney films, you know, as a kid, I would
Sure.
play, you know, those songs over and over. And back then, so in the 70s, you might remember this, you could buy these things when you were a kid. They looked like TVs, but you'd put in these plastic like record type things, and it would play a movie with music.
Right.
And it was like so cool, you know, and that was a huge thing to me as a kid. I would play them over and over, Lady and the Tramp, and they would, and the word, it would be like a storybook with music. It was amazing. And so I remember that. And then I was really into the Partridge Family.
Well, who doesn't?
I
I mean,
think I
right?
love you. So what am I so afraid of? You know, I mean, I love David Cassidy.
Oh, who? Yes, I did too. And it, it was so cool to see that. I remember staring at that show and loving it. And I can only imagine. Did you, as you going over in teenage years, so you're expanding to more pop music, I assume, right?
Yeah, so you know, during my ice skating, you know, we've listened to those same eight tracks, and then,
Yeah.
you know, I was exposed to classical music because, you know, I competed, and so you know, we put classical music together for me to skate to. So I was really introduced to classical music, which was super beautiful. So I have an ear for that, and I listen to it to this day. I love classics and I love soundtracks, and I like, my favorite soundtrack is John Barry's Out of Africa. Like, I can listen to that over and over again. And I love that kind of music. But then when I stopped skating and I got into high school, and wait, let me back up a little bit. So in the 70s, disco was huge.
Yes, it
And
was.
I was skating. And I remember my mom and her brother started going disco dancing, and they'd play the records at home. And so I had an ear for disco music. I loved it. And, you know, Bee Gees were huge. And then when I got to high school, I stopped skating right before I started high school. And I think the first album that I played over and over again my freshman year was Supertramp.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great album.
Breakfast for America or
Yeah,
something. What am
exactly.
I?
Yeah.
Is that it? I
Yes, it
mean,
is.
that's,
It's perfect. Yes.
oh my God, I vaguely remember that. And then I got super into the Pretenders. That Mystery Achievement, I must have played that 100,000 times. Pat Benatar, Blondie.
Yes.
I loved all the women, you know, I was like into all these
Yes.
women that were just rocking it.
It, I have to ask though, what led you to want to start skating, and then why did you quit?
So I went when I think I was in first grade. I got invited to a birthday party at Harbor City Ice Skating Rink in Torrance, in Harbor City, you know, near Torrance. And I went to this birthday party and I put on the skates, got on the ice, and it was like, that's where I belonged.
Wow.
It just, I loved it from the minute. I loved the smell of the ice skating rink. I loved walking in my skates. Like, I was like, where have you been all my life? It was that kind of a moment. Like, I just loved everything about the ice skating rink. And it's funny because I've gone back years later to some of the skating rinks that I skated at. And when I was little, they seemed so much bigger.
Sure.
And they were so little. I was like,
Yes.
it's so crazy. But anyway, so I took group lessons. I started in the group and went right through it, like immediately. And when you finish the last group, they offer that you should get a coach and take less private lessons. And I knew exactly the coach I wanted. And I begged to take lessons every day. And I ended up taking lessons twice a week. And my mom knew that I loved it so much. She's like, okay. And then she signed me up for patch. Back when I skated, you had to do figures.
Okay.
And so she signed me up for that. And that's why we started going at 4 a.m. Because the only time you could really get uh, patch on the ice was early morning before school,
Sure.
because then they had public session after school. So, and then the reason that I stopped skating is my parents got divorced when I was 14. And my mother, her whole check, all the money that she made went towards my skating. And so when they got divorced, now she had to support herself.
Sure.
I didn't have a lot of money in my family growing up.
Right.
And so when that was going to be the case, that they were going to get divorced, it just faded out. It was
Hmm.
really sad for me because it was like going through two really big grieving. I grieved my parents' divorce, and then I grieved stopping skating,
Sure.
because my skating world really became my family. And so it was really sad, you know, to not see my coaches, to not see these people that really taught me how to grow up. And, a lot of my life lessons came from ice skating. And so it was really sad. And so, yeah, and for a long time, I wouldn't put skates on. I was really sad about it and rebellious about it. But it's funny because I still skate today. I'll go
Yeah.
once in a while, and I can't do jumps or anything now, but I skate around, and you know,
And I know from one of the things that I think has to be interesting from you is your perspective now. And it sounds like you're a really good kid and were supportive of your mom's decision, but you now know from this angle, knowing how much that must have hurt your mother, that because as parents, we want to do anything we can for our kids.
absolutely, yeah, it's brutal when you can't,
Yeah.
and I really felt that from my mom. I felt that she was just she really didn't know what to do.
Right.
And she was very young when she had me. She was 19. And, at 19, you just don't have these tools. And so
Exactly.
she's kind of faking it till you make it type thing. And it took me a lot of years to really understand that. I mean,
Hmm.
obviously there was a lot of resentment on both parts. This is all we did together.
Yes.
Both my mother and I, this is all we did, this was my skating was a way for us to bond. And when we took that away, it was almost like,
Well, and it's almost, I can only imagine, if in a lot of ways, you lost your community, not,
yes,
not just the coaches, but your fellow, the other people you were skating with, the other people you practice with, the whole community of that rink and that whole culture of going to meets and competing and doing all that. And all of a sudden, you're gone, and um, your mom is trying to figure out what to do as a single mom and to go through. So I can bet that was pretty traumatic.
oh yeah, super traumatic. Is there's certain things in my childhood that for a long time, when I would think about it, would just bring up like those sad. But then when you start to get smart, and you start to realize that I can change the story. And the
Yes.
story is, how many kids can say they got up at 4 a.m. and got on the ice and competed as an ice skater? And not a lot. So I feel very grateful for those years. And also it really saved my life, because the lessons that I learned about falling and getting back up, you know really came to play later on in my life, and I didn't even know it. didn't even know, because I was like, where am I getting this strength from? Oh yeah, I used to fall down all the time,
Well, and
you know?
do you feel that, and we're going to get to your time when you were a playmate and a model, but do you feel that that early love of performing has helped you like in your sales career and as your business career? Because early in your bones, right, you learned how to not be afraid of crowds, not to be afraid of failure, trying to do something, and if you don't, as you just said, well, literally falling down and getting up, not just figuratively, but literally. Do you think
Yeah,
that's fed a lot of your drive and success?
absolutely. A lot. When I really look back, and I get a real good, clear perspective of the things that really led me along the way. I mean, I had to hustle from a very early age. I was thinking about this. Somebody asked me, what was your first job? Somebody
Hmm.
asked me this, and I thought I knew, and
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I used to put, this is a true story. Before I could get a paycheck, because you had, the minimum wage, I was too young to get a job, a
Right.
paycheck. So I worked my freshman year summer at Inglewood Cemetery, because one of the moms worked in the flower shop. So she said her daughter and I could work there in the summer. And what we did was we cut the stems off flowers and prepared them so they could make the flower arrangements. And then we went out on the golf cart or whatever. It wasn't really a
Yeah.
golf cart, but that kind of a
Yeah.
vehicle. And we put the flowers on the cemeteries. And
Okay.
I was 14, maybe 15, my freshman year summer. So I was 15. I just turned
Hmm.
15. And I remember doing that as my first job. But then I thought about it. I was like, wait, that was not my first job. My first job, I was a little entrepreneur. I lived on a street called Yukon in Torrance between Artesia and Redondo Beach Boulevard.
Okay.
And this neighborhood was very Asian, lot of Asian. It was a very Asian neighborhood, and a lot of the kids did not speak English. And I was going to the private Catholic school in Redondo Beach. And so I'd walk home from school, and all these parents would see me walking home from school in my uniform. And they thought, well, she looks really smart. And I was nice and approachable. And they asked me if I would tutor their kids. And I started this little business in my neighborhood where I taught all these kids that were coming over. I had families from China, families from Korea, a couple of kids from Japan, all over. And
Yeah.
I was teaching, and I must have been in fifth grade. So however
Oh, how
old,
funny.
I was like in fourth and fifth grade, and that was my first job. And I had a little business because it was almost like I had a tutoring business, and
Yeah, you did have a tutoring business.
I did.
Yeah.
So I was like, I was a little entrepreneur at 9, 10 years old. And
Yeah.
then, I liked having my own money.
Sure.
I liked that feeling of, but here's what happened. So all of a sudden I get this feeling of like, oh my God, I have money, and I don't know, I'm 12 years old or whatever, 10 or 12. And all of a sudden I'm ditching school to go to the store to buy candy because I have freedom. I have
Sure.
this money. So now I start doing bad things with it. So then, of course, my mom kind of nipped that in the bud. She's like, you can't work if you're going to ditch
Yeah,
school.
exactly.
But I thought, well, all of a sudden I felt like I had this power. I was too young to have that much
Mhm.
power. And it was just interesting. But I had forgotten all about that. And I was like, wait a minute, that was my first job.
Did did your competing on the rink, did that lead to um and pageants or doing other things that led you to your modeling career, or was it just totally unrelated?
No, totally unrelated. As a matter
Okay.
of fact, before I started skating, my mom had put me in baby pageants and
Right.
beauty pageants as a child, and she'd try to take me on commercial auditions and stuff. I was kind of cute as a little baby,
Yeah.
So she's hustling me. She was started hustling me right off the bat. But my mom was super young,
Hmm.
and so she just thought I'll put her in a baby contest.
Yeah.
And I did really well, for a while with her, doing that. But I
Yeah.
stopped all that when I started skating.
Okay.
And then it wasn't until I became a professional cheerleader
Okay.
in 1983 for the LA Express.
Okay.
And during that time, I had met some girls that had gone to Japan to dance. And they said it was a great gig, easy money, and like really easy job. You dance at these two clubs that were back to back, and you did 3 shows at each club. So you worked every night, you slept during the day, and you did these shows. And they told me how much money it was, and I said, "There's no way."
Yeah, that just doesn't make sense, right?
It just didn't make sense to me. But Japan loved bringing over dancers, and in the early 80s, break dancing was really popular, and we were doing all that kind of dancing, for cheerleading and the professional cheerleading stuff. And so I was like, oh, so I thought I'll do it. So 2 of the girls and I went to Japan to dance, and our contract was for 3 months. But while I was in Japan, I had an agent approach me and say, I have a commercial that I think, this is all broken down. I think
Sure.
you could do a commercial. And I'm thinking, okay, and so I ended up doing this commercial. I was in a poodle skirt, like 50s poodle skirt, and they had me on the set, and all I was doing was dancing and smiling, and
Right.
and I made really good money doing that. And I thought, really? So when I came back I ended up staying and modeling in Japan. And when I came back, I told everybody, I think I'm going to model. And they were like, you're 5'6", like models are 5'10", 5'12", like what?
Yeah.
6 foot, like, and they're really thin and they do fashion. And I'm like, no, I did this modeling in Japan. I think I can do modeling. I think I can do catalog work. And I didn't think I was going to end up in Rome on the runway.
Right.
I knew my niche.
Mhm.
And so what I first did was I came back and I went and studied at Tepper Gallegos, this commercial casting workshop. And I found it. I can't even really remember how I found it, but I think it was through one of those entertainment, like
Okay.
drama log or something like that.
Sure.
I picked it up and I found this commercial workshop, and I did it. It was for 6 weeks. And at the end of 6 weeks, they have agents come from all over LA and they watch you do a commercial. And then if you're good, they'll ask if they can sign you or meet with you. And so 3 of the agents that night asked if they could meet with me. One of them wanted to sign me on the spot. And I ended up signing with the one who wanted to sign me on the spot, because I said, well, if this person wants me now, they see something. I'm going
If they
with
believe
them.
in me, I'm going to.
Yeah.
That's good.
So I signed in. The name of that agency was Pacific Artists. And I was leaving on a plane to go to New Mexico to shoot a car commercial for Chrysler. And I ended up doing really well. And then from that, I started building a portfolio, and I ended up getting a print agent. Mary Webb Davis was my first agency, and then another agent called Style in Orange County.
Yeah.
And, people said I wasn't going to model, and I ended up booking catalog work and swimsuit work. And there's work available to girls that are 5'6". So,
I love the story, the idea that you knew that you wanted to try, and not letting people tell you, no, well, you don't fit the mold, right? It's like, well, no, I can make my own mode and we'll see. And so that's pretty amazing. And I know you must have been just, okay, that's kind of cool this happened.
Yeah, it was really cool. And it gave me momentum. And anytime in life when you say you're going to do something, that's the beginning. And then just showing up, I just kept showing up. And I was relentless too. I would do my own submissions. I didn't just rely on my agency to do what was in my best interest. I would sit for hours and go through, because back then you could get casting notices in different trades. And I'd go through and send my headshot everywhere. I mean, I'd hand deliver sometimes to people just to see if I'd run into somebody. They were like, oh, okay, thank you. And I'd just be like, hey, but if they, I'll even do extra work, and they're
Right.
like, okay, thank you. And so I was creating momentum also. I wasn't just waiting for the phone to ring, with an audition here and there. I was sitting in between trying to get I would do car shows.
Hmm.
I was those girls in the glitter dress with a microphone
Yeah.
describing the new Chevy, whatever,
Right.
like I did car shows. I did everything,
Well,
to make a dollar.
one of the things, Deborah, that I love you're telling us, because I have a couple of friends who are creative, and uh, they are entrepreneurs just as much as they are artistic. In other words,
Yeah.
they go out and figure out, how can I sell my work? How can I sell? What's a new angle I can do? What's a creative idea that I can self-publish my own, comic book or my own art, what I can do to drive business. And it sounds like you had that drive very beginning, that you wanted to do this.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
what's the journey to get in Playboy?
So I had an agent,
Yeah.
and in 1989, so I'd been living in LA for a couple years now. And I was commuting. My mom lived in Dana Point. I'd been
Hmm.
commuting for a long time, and I had been living in LA now for a couple of years with two other starving actresses, so to
Yeah.
speak. And my agent called me out of the blue, and well, this audition came out of the blue. And she
Yeah.
basically said that Playboy was coming out with a magazine called The Lingerie Book, and that they saw a photo of me and they thought I would be really great for the cover. And I thought, well, is there any nudity involved? You know? And she's like, I don't think so. But this is when the famous Playboy building was on Sunset. And
Okay.
so I took my portfolio and I went over for an audition. And that afternoon, they called me and said, we want to test you for Playboy. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, me? Are you sure? I think
Yeah.
you got the wrong girl, because I was a little bit difficult at the audition because they wanted me to take everything off and put a robe. And I was like, no, I'm not here for that. I'm here for the lingerie book. And they're like, but everything we do involves nudity and we need to see your body. Well, back then, because I'm aging myself a little bit nowadays, they don't care. But back then, they're looking for scars, tattoos, piercings,
Right.
birthmarks. They're looking at your skin. They really were. And so
Right.
I said, no, I'm not here for that. And so it's difficult. And I left. And then when they said they wanted to test me for Playboy, I was like, that can't be right.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like, I'm not the Playboy type. And then I called my agent. She's like, yeah, it's true. They want to test you to be a centerfold. And I was like, oh my God, that's crazy. And you have to remember too, in 1989, Playboy was the #1 magazine in the world.
Yes.
So I just remember thinking, well, a lot of celebrities that I looked up to at the time were doing pictorials in the magazine, and it was just a famous gig. And so I
Sure.
thought, okay. So I went and did the first test, and they liked it, and they said, we're shooting you for a Playboy, for a centerfold, because first they test and then they decide if they're going to put the time and effort into you, because
Right.
it takes close to 2 months to shoot the whole
Wow.
thing. Yeah. So once I tested, they liked what they saw, and next thing I knew, I was doing a full on centerfold photo shoot layout, and it was like I would show up on some days just like, I'm at the famous Playboy building on Sunset shooting to be a centerfold.
Yeah.
And it's like, if somebody would have told me 5 years prior, in 5 years, you're going to be a centerfold in Playboy, I would have said, there's no way. I couldn't believe it. Even to this day, it still seems
Yeah.
like a dream.
One of the things I'd sent you before is, what's the question you're tired of answering about your time as a playmate?
That's a good question. I don't know that there is one that I'm
There isn't
tired of
one. Okay.
answering. I get the general, what was it like to pose for Playboy? I get that, and I get, what's half like.
Yes.
Everybody always wants to know, are the rumors true? Are the parties as wild as they what everybody thinks they
Yeah.
are, so I get that. Here's a funny story.
Please.
So I am married. All my kids are maybe 3, 5, and 6. Okay. So my kids are young, and their friends' parents and my ex-husband and I are in a limo going to see the Pussycat Dolls at the Roxy Theater. And we're in the limo, and the dad of the other, our friend, the dad, he says to me, okay, I can't take it any longer. I have to ask you, what was it like posing for Playboy?
Yeah.
So the whole ride to the Roxy Theater, I'm talking about Playboy, I'm talking about Hef, and they're all just, him and his wife are just like,
yeah,
like, because they can't believe, like, I'm a mom at the preschool.
Right.
And they're like, wait, what? They're like trying to grasp this. Here's the best part. We get out of the limo, and who's standing there with his 4 girlfriends waiting to go into the rainbow room is Hef. And he says, Deborah, and I go, Hef. And we hug, and now my friends are like,
oh,
they're like, you can't
Yes.
write this. Because the whole car ride, all I'm doing is talking about Hef and the Playboy Mansion and my experience. And next thing you know, we get out of the car, and there's Hef with his 4 blondes. They're getting ready to go into the rainbow room, and we're going to the Roxy to see the Pussycat Dolls. And you can't write this. Because he's like, Deborah, and I'm like, Hef. And I give him a big hug, and oh my God.
That's wonderful. He remembered you. It sounds like he had a really good memory, and
he knew all the girls.
Wow,
and there's a reason for that, because he chose every single one.
Wow.
Not one gatefold got by him. He looked at everything, and he decided what month, and he knew every detail. So there's a reason why he would remember us. He knew us. Yeah.
So because I was waiting for I was wondering if people come and, especially like with the kids, like, okay, I hate to be embarrassing, but like, will you sign my copy? Right? Like, I'm sure that's got to have happened a couple of times.
Yeah, of course. I've had people still to this day reach out on social media, and they're like, if I send you my magazine, is there somewhere I can send it? Will you sign it for me? And now with Donald Trump being on the cover of my issue, he has made it a collector's item. So thank you, Mr. President.
I did not realize that. No, tell me more about this.
Yeah, so Donald Trump is on the cover of my issue that I'm the centerfold in. So I get more fan mail today than I did when I was a centerfold, because now it's a collector's item. Everybody wants me to sign it.
Oh,
if you go online, if you go online and you try to buy March 1990, I think it's tripled in price now.
Wow.
So anybody that has that issue is reaching out to me, will you please sign it? Because it's a collector's item. So if you've got Donald Trump on the cover and then you've got me signed on the inside, it's a pretty good collector's item. Yeah.
What is there a couple, that sounds like a great highlight, but during your time, is there other great stories that you kind of go, I can't believe I'm a simple California girl from Hawthorne, California, and this is happening to me?
Yeah, no, I have so many of those. I mean, I remember I got cast to be in a commercial, and they didn't tell me who I was going to be working with. It was just, all I knew is it was for Suntory whiskey for Japan. And I booked a lot of commercials for Japan. They really liked my look and the personality. They for some reason I jived really well with Japan. And so they brought me in for the Suntory whiskey, and I booked it, and I got on the set, and Mickey Rourke was shooting the commercial with me, and I had no idea. So that was a fun surprise,
Yeah.
This was in the 80s, and he was huge.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, it was huge. Yeah. So that was fun. And, I mean, I've had many fun dinners and experiences, and I've met many people at the mansion. I mean, anybody you name, I've met at the mansion.
Yeah.
Everybody who's who, from George Clooney to Ben Affleck, to Leonardo to, you know, directors, producers,
Yeah.
everybody I've met up at the mansion.
You I read your IMDb bio, and as I said, I was so impressed because you and the word Phoenix came up to me, is that, you reached a point where, you know, you've decided you're no longer in a model, or acting isn't working, so you're going to business. And then, like, you did banking originally, right? And then that we had the big bank crisis and you had to reinvent yourself. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I had my agents all the way up until about 2000. In 2003, I'm going to skip over a lot of stuff,
Sure.
but in 2003, my husband and I decided to move to Park City, Utah, and leave LA and raise our kids in a small town environment. And
Sure.
it was that was a really good decision for our kids because just being shuffled around in a car in LA
Yeah.
and going to private schools and just all the stuff that they were hearing and the competitiveness, we just decided that wasn't going to be for us. And so we went to Park City. I ended up hosting the Mountain Morning Show for Park City TV. And in 2004, we got divorced. And that was a really tough time for us. There was not a lot of money and there was not a big uh, marriage settlement.
Yeah.
So I had to go back to work. And my first big gig was real estate. And in 2008, when the market took a complete crash, the first market to go was the market I was working in, which was second home luxury.
Yeah.
That was done. So I had to reinvent myself, and then I got into life insurance. And so I think what the hardest thing for me is to reinvent and have people take me seriously in business. And when I started in real estate, I didn't know anything. I studied for my test I think I got that license in 2 to 3 weeks. I just every day applied myself, and I was super worried because there was a lot of math on the test. And so because I applied myself, I ended up passing. And then, when I started working for a guy who was the number one realtor at the firm that I chose, and I told him, I was really on it. I said, I don't even know how to scan. I don't know how to fax. I don't even know. I've never worked in an office. And he's like, I could teach you all that if you manage my clients. And we found this reciprocity. Like, I would manage the clients and he would show me how to do all the office interior behind the scenes stuff, which I picked up quick. And he showed me marketing and all sorts of really cool real estate stuff. And I managed all the clients. And he had 22 listings when I started with him. And that was a lot to do marketing reports every Monday to our clients. And, I'd get calls, them yelling, what's going on? And so I learned a lot with him. And God, what a great experience that was. But when the market turned, I had to start all over again. And there was about a year where I literally lost everything because I was just making enough money to get by. And now with no income, I had nothing left. So I moved in with my mom. So talk about hitting rock bottom, like no money, moving back with my mom who lived in Ocala, Florida. And then my ex took the kids because he's remarried now and they have a little bit of a stable environment. And he was working, I wasn't working. So just all these changes. And then I was just trying to figure out, what am I going to do now?
So
and
why insurance?
So what happened was I worked at a different company first. And while I was working for that company, I called the firm that did our insurance. I remembered that I had referred them a lot of business. So I called him up and I said, hey, if I keep referring you business, can I get a referral fee? Because now I know about referral fees. Now I know about things that I didn't know about. I was just doing all this stuff for free.
Right.
I think, I was being so cool and nice, but I'm like, oh, you can get paid for referrals. And I'm like, oh, from now on, anybody, this is it. Like, and I had referred him really big cases. And so he goes, Deborah, go get your license. Just like that.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh, okay. So his assistant told me what to do. I got my light. On the weekend, I'm working for this company out of New York. And on the weekends, I'm studying now to get that license. And I kind of overlapped. I was working both jobs so I could make money. And now I have my kids back living with me full time. And I'm like, and I'm telling my kids, here's the deal. I have to work. You're headed into high school years. I need you guys. We need to be a team. We need to work together because I got to work. And so they understood that this was the deal and they wanted to live with me. So I said, well, then this is what we have to do because I really have to focus and keep us afloat. I don't want to ever be back in that situation in 2008 where I lost everything. So this time around, I put the foot to the pedal to the metal, foot
Yeah.
to the floor, whatever you want to say. And I was like on speed, go, go, go. And I did not put my foot down, a phone down, I should say. I did not put my phone down every day until I had at least one new client. And that's how relentless I was. And in 2011, 12, and 13, I was the number one agent at 3 different carriers. And yeah, so
I just, that is, I've, early in my career, I spent about a year working for insurance, working as a life insurance agent, and I just was not good at it. And it is a little bit. I made the joke that when you're a podcast host that does a show of interviews, just like an insurance agent, you're always prospecting. I am
always.
always looking for guests. I mean, it is amazing. And just this weekend, a writer was promoting her new book, and she tweeted that hearing Bruce Springsteen's Jungle Land kind of woke her up and changed how she wrote her novel. She was making it kind of autobiographical. She changed it and it freed her up. And I immediately, hey, I do a Bruce Springsteen podcast. Any way you want to join me, I reach out. And so I can imagine you aren't exaggerating about not putting that phone down.
No, I did not put that phone down until I had a new client every day. Like I was relentless. It got to the point where things were happening so fast that I couldn't even keep up with my own momentum. And that's
Mhm.
a good thing. That's a good
It is a
problem
good
to
thing.
have.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a great little Bruce Springsteen piece of trivia for you.
Please,
You're
please.
gonna like this.
Okay.
So in 1989, 90, and 91, I was in a 2-year Meisner acting class. And guess who was in my acting class?
I'm going to guess a certain ex-wife of Bruce Springsteen. Oh, how funny.
Yeah, Julianne Phillips was
Yeah.
in my acting class.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yep.
That's pretty
And
cool.
by the way, and my ex-husband
Yeah.
might just be in the top 20 top Bruce Springsteen fans.
Oh, really?
Huge fan.
Oh.
So I really got turned on to Bruce Springsteen through my ex-husband
So
because
tell me a little.
I wasn't really like
Right. When,
um
so when he's a fan, what kind of woke that up to your learning about Bruce's music, and what about did speak to you when, not just because of the connection with him, but did you find Bruce's voice yourself and what you found his music?
well, I just think I mean, he's just when I think of Bruce, I think of the flag. He's
Yes.
just like Mr. America. He's just like this is like how would I say this? I love America. You know
Right.
what I mean? You just
Sure.
want to say, I love America. And that's what his music reminds me of. And it's just all about loving America, like born in the USA. Hello.
Absolutely. Did is there any did you get to go during your time being a playmate, any good concerts or any musical stories? You mentioned meeting a few actors, but did you get to meet some musicians and have some experiences with that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've been backstage at um, now I'm going to space on his name from Led Zeppelin, Robert Plant.
Okay.
I was backstage with Robert Plant and Billy Idol And I couldn't even tell you, like literally, music is not really like, wasn't really my thing. But I think my first concert, you're gonna laugh when I tell you what my first concert
Okay.
was, because I was in love with him, like in
Yes.
love, was Rick Springfield.
Sure.
So that was my first concert. And then
Yeah.
my second was, I think I went to the Pretenders.
Yeah.
And my first concert, sorry, my first concert was Donna Summer at the Greek Theater.
Yes.
And I was a sophomore in high school. And my second concert was Rick Springfield and then the Pretenders.
Is there a moment that the teenager you inside went, I can't believe this is happening? Like you've talked already, like I'm in Japan, I'm dancing, I'm auditioning for, Playboy. But is there something where you go, this is surreal, I cannot believe, one that stands out more of everything else, Deborah?
Well, when I was in Japan the first time,
Yeah.
I was 20 years old. I had my 21st birthday in Osaka, Japan.
Wow.
And one night after, I told you we performed 3 shows,
Yeah.
so about 6 shows a night. And there's a street in Osaka, it's called Shinsaibashi. And back in the 80s, there was a famous club on Shinsaibashi called Maggie's. And we're walking on Shinsaibashi, and the girl I'm with, we're getting ready to get a taxi and go home because we've been to all the spots. After
Yeah.
we got done performing, we'd go hit all our favorite spots. And we're walking, we see like, it looked like Americans walking towards us, like 6 or 7 guys. And we're like, wait a minute, there's Americans. And as they got closer, we realized it was Rod Stewart. And he's like, ladies, can you tell me where Maggie's is? And my girlfriend and I look at each other. We're like, we'll take you there. And so we turn back around and we go back to Maggie's. Because he wants to go to Maggie. Of course, we walk in and they see that we walk in with Rod Stewart, and they immediately played Maggie, whatever.
Yeah, Maggie May. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, they play the song, and my girlfriend and I are like, this cannot be happening. Oh my God, like we're with Rod Stewart. This is crazy. And he and his whole crew, they were so nice. We stayed there. I think the place closed at like 5 a.m. We stayed there dancing, and we had so much fun. And I remember, I wrote letters back to the US. I must have written 30 letters the next day to everybody I knew. Guess who I met? Oh my God.
I can imagine.
And I mean, literally, he kept put his arm around us, and he's like, and I'd just be like, what is happening?
Yeah.
So that was great. And then I got to meet George Ridgely from Wham.
Oh, good.
George Michael wasn't there that night, but the whole band was there, Andrew Ridgely, and because they were there performing. And then Madonna was on her tour, Who's That Girl tour. So I met her whole band. She wasn't out. She doesn't go out, but because we were the dancers, a lot of these bands would come in and party while we were doing our shows. And we met everybody. It was great.
What a great experience.
Yeah.
I can only imagine it, because you're talking about, in that time when you're going to acting class with Julianne Phillips. This is post-marriage with Bruce. So that must have been, right? Yeah.
He was right after she got divorced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He talks about that in his autobiography of how he was a really bad husband and he was not ready to be together.
What's the song that he sings? Something Disguise?
Yeah, Brilliant Disguise. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that was the big song during their divorce.
Yes. And so, wow, I bet that's interesting. That's great. All right. So what's next for Deborah? What do you got going on next? What's your next goal you're going to conquer?
Well, I am going to come up with some anti-aging some sort of scenario that I can keep looking young and keep aging gracefully. I'm really into anti-aging, and I'm always looking for the next thing to do it in a graceful way, because I really don't want to do the surgery route.
Yeah.
And so I've been really like, okay, what can I do to keep my youthful look and age gracefully?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking at that. I have been fortunate enough to invest in some startups. So, I'm just knock on wood that one of them hits.
Yeah.
I've also been fortunate enough to be able to give back philanthropically to a lot of different endeavors. I adopted a school in Peru, and so I keep in touch, to see how that's working out and
Hmm.
make sure they have supplies and all of that. And then during the pandemic this last year, I decided to write a book. So now I'm just at a place where we've written the book, and I'm just trying to decide what to do. If I'm going to self-publish, am I going to go through an agent? Do I want to
Yeah.
just, I'm just, so I'm doing that, and I'm still in the insurance world, cranking it out,
Hmm.
you know. So
So
yeah.
what what kind of music are you listening to now? What music brings you joy and comfort, especially during this past year, which has been so crazy?
Well, I have to tell you, I became a huge fan of Taylor Swift. I
Sure.
love her. I love the album that she just won all the awards for, the folklore. I've been listening to that quite a bit. I think she is super talented, and she and I share a birthday.
Oh, very
Yeah,
nice.
we have the same birthday. So yeah, I'm really, I didn't like her at first, but I really like this last album that she put out. I actually listen to a lot of soundtrack music.
Hmm.
So, if I'm watching it, like I've to this day, I still listen to The Mission.
Hmm.
I love the soundtrack. I can't think of I know it's an Italian name. The person, the album that did the album, amazing album. I love John Barry. I love you know listening to music like that. That's kind of how I start my day. Is I'll put on one of those albums and do some meditation and kind of drift off into an imaginary world of how I like to see the day going. And so yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. My musical tastes have changed. I like rock from the 80s and
Yeah,
90s, you know.
sure.
I'm still a White Snake girl. I love White Snake,
Absolutely.
you know.
So, hey, I'm excited to read the book. I hope, however you publish it, whether it's self-published or
Yeah.
that, I think, you tell great stories, so that's going to be exciting and fun to do. Um, is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't?
No, I think we covered it.
Okay.
I think you did a fabulous job.
You're very sweet to say that. That's very nice. All right. So then
Yeah.
before I let you go, I've got to ask you the Mary question. So
The
Jay,
Mary question.
yes.
Okay.
So Jay Armstrong is a retired honors English teacher in the Philadelphia area. And he was on the show and he explained to me that every year he would take 2 days of the classroom, his seniors, and they would take the Bruce Springsteen song Thunder Road, read all through the lyrics, talk about the imagery, and then at the end of the 2 days, he would ask the question, does Mary get in the car? So, Deborah, that is your question. Does Mary get in the end of does Mary get in the car at the end of Thunder Road?
Absolutely, she gets in the car. There's no question.
Okay.
I forget the last line of the song, but I think he says
Yes. Yeah.
something to the point of,
We're pulling out of here to win.
"We're pulling
Absolutely.
out of here to win." Who doesn't
Absolutely.
get in that car? I want to meet the person who doesn't get in that car, so I
I
can go,
love
"What
it.
is wrong with you?"
Very great. If someone wants to reach you, how can they?
Follow me on Instagram.
Okay.
My
And
all my journey is going to be on Instagram. I'm going to be posting a link to my website
okay.
very soon, like in the next couple weeks.
Okay.
And on my website is going to be all my past photos and work that I've done, and then all the new stuff that's coming up and some surprise stuff. And
Okay.
it's going to be great because it'll have an address where people can send things to have signed
Oh,
and
good.
all of that. Yeah. So I will put that link in my Instagram, on
Okay.
my Instagram page.
And Deborah Driggs. Deborah
Driggs,
Driggs. Driggs.
Driggs.
Yes. Very nice. All right. Well, you have been a joy. Thank you so much
Thank
for visiting with
you.
me. This was a blast. I hope you remain safe and continued success. Um,
Thank you. Everybody stay safe, and thank you so much for listening.
yes, listeners, you remember to wash your hands, remember to social distance, remember to wear a mask, ignore what the governor of Texas is saying as I sit here in Texas. Let's all be good to each other because that's the only way we're going to get through this. Thank you, and we'll talk to you soon. Goodbye. Doing a podcast at times can be a one-way conversation, and I hate that. So please let me know what you like and don't like about the work I'm doing. You can reach the podcast via email at setlistingbruce@gmail.com. The show is on Twitter at setlistingbruce, and my personal Twitter is at jessejacksondfw. We have a website, www.setlistingbruce.com. From there, you can find links to other Springsteen podcasts as well as other music-themed podcasts. We have a page devoted to our own SLB All-Star Band. These are guests who have been on the podcast more than 3 times. There is a link to our store where you can purchase Set Listing Bruce shirts as well as a Mary Question t-shirt. There is a link to our Patreon page where you can sign up to help support the podcast financially. We have different levels and different rewards based on your support. If you don't have any extra cash, and right now, who does? You can support the podcast by subscribing via your favorite podcast player and leaving us a review. The more reviews we have, the easier it is for people to find us. And please tell a friend about the podcast, especially if they love Bruce or music, because it will make a difference. You just heard the fun talking, hard rocking, music loving, album ranking, fan thanking, joy spreading, lyric reading, story sharing podcast that is the one, the only, Set Listing Bruce. Set Listing Bruce is part of the Southgate Media podcast group. The theme for Set Listing Bruce was written by David Rosen, used by permission.